Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee here on the Joe Chaffee Show. It's a Sunday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. I thought this would be a good time to come on the air, being that it is Sunday, and also being that Game of Thrones is on tonight. So it's kind of pointless to do a live stream when that is airing, since that's what everyone is going to be watching. So, except for me, because I don't have HBO and I never really got into the series very much. I'll probably watch it afterward when it shows up on Netflix or something. No matter. What an incredible day this was. Incredible from the standpoint of how miserable it is here in the East. Very cloudy day. Didn't get a whole lot of rain down my way. Much of the rain passed by to the north. It was a struggle to forecast temperatures here, and we'll get to that in a second. And of course, Chicago, as Scott Briller is pointing out in the chat tonight, received 2.5 inches, which is the second latest ever, behind May 3, 1907. 3.1 inches of snow. So the very tight weather system that it was has moved along, and now we're getting ready to move into a new week. None of what we see, by the way, is really that unusual. Yeah, it is a bit late to see it accumulating snow, even in Chicago. But spring, the first half of spring anyway, always winds up exhibiting a ton of volatility because you still have the last vestiges of winter just kind of hanging on for dear life while the atmosphere continues to warm up from south to north, and we have evidence of that today as well. So we're going to get started here, and we'll start by bringing up I'm going to bring up the surface map first and foremost, and we'll take a look at just exactly what's going on. And here we go. All right, so low pressure is weak. It's over the northern part of Delaware Bay. You've got a warm front that's trailing across South Jersey. And to the north, it's chilly. Temperatures did not get out of the 40s in a lot of places, and you really didn't even have to go that far north to find patches of upper 30s. I know some of my regulars that are up in upstate New York, especially in the elevated areas. I don't think Chuck's on tonight, right now, but I bet you that he probably had some snow up his way that accumulated, at least on grassy surfaces. But this low is weak. It's moving along and getting out of the way. And if you get down into the warm sector, you're talking about temperatures that made it up into the 70s and 80s down through the Carolinas. There's your trailing cold front. And the air behind this low is actually, for this time of year, it's pretty chilly. So with this high coming in for tonight, we have some frost advisories that are up for parts of eastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, southeastern New York, and down into interior southern New England, and even coastal southern New England under frost advisory. Growing season has already gotten underway. And as a result, well, folks that put their plants early, but that's a pretty decent cold high that is built down on the backside. It's got cool temperatures down through much of the Ohio Valley and even pushing down into parts of Tennessee and Arkansas, where it was a pretty pleasant day. And then out in the plains, we have the next low that is developing. And actually, we have a narrow band of blizzard warnings that are up in parts of the northernmost plains and northernmost Montana. It isn't really for a whole lot of snow that they're forecasting for that particular area. They aren't. I noticed that most of the snow amounts were on the low side, although I just suddenly saw that they did pop up some winter storm warnings up for parts of North Dakota, just for laughs. I just want to see what they're going for. There's an ob there from Bismarck at 39, and I'll bring up Minot, North Dakota, just to see what they're going for snow-wise tonight. Snowing there, and they're forecasting 1 to 3 inches, and then another 3 to well, that's what their forecast was for late this afternoon, and about 3 to 5 for tonight. In the blizzard area, Let's go a little bit further to the west here, and then we'll take a look at what's happening. Heavy snow expected at times. We'll pull up Great Falls. That's usually a good spot. They're under a blizzard warning at the moment, and they're 27 with a mild visibility and light snow, and they're going for gusts of 45 miles an hour, 1 to 3 inches of snow accumulation from late this afternoon into tonight. So basically it's 1 to 3, 2 to 4, and that you add a 45-mile-an-hour wind, of course, and you're dealing more with blowing snow than anything else. So here's a look at some of the current temperatures that are going on at the moment. And it's a little hard to see with the colors that they use on the enhanced data display map from the Weather Service, but it is chilly through upstate New York and into New England, 40s and some lower 50s. This is a time of year, too, when the sun makes a big difference. So if it comes out, these temperatures get boosted fairly quickly. And I had mentioned the fact that wherever that low tracked, south and east of there, it was going to be in the 60s. And my problem was because the low was going to pretty much try to split through my area. So parts of southern New Jersey are in the 60s right now. And you can see the temperatures 70s, 80s down through Virginia. Look at these numbers down through North and South Carolina. Atlanta's at 81. Low and middle 80s just about everywhere. And this air is dry, by the way. It's not humid at all. So they are, at least from that standpoint, weather conditions are fairly pleasant. I'm going to jump over to the radar, and we'll take a look at that as we watch an area of rain in the east. Really not all that organized here that moved on through. Much of the rain was very light off the coast of Long Island and southeastern Massachusetts. We've got rain that is moving across parts of the Hudson Valley here and back through the Catskills. Probably a little bit of snow going on in the elevated areas. And we're seeing the precip now moving into through Massachusetts and northern Connecticut and heading out to the east. In the plains, you've got the low producing what looks like a fairly decent band of snow through North Dakota, actually, and also some heavier showers in the warmer air out to the east. And that'll probably change over. And then the radar showing some patchy areas back over through parts of Montana. Doing pretty well in Colorado with some showers. It looks like even a couple of thunderstorms starting to bubble up there because we do have severe weather risks going on in parts of the plains. And out in the west, up and down, California seeing some showers coming into Southern California, but it's dry through Central and Northern California. I just want to let's bring up let's go to SPC and take a look at the severe weather risk for today. And here it is. You've got a slight risk sitting in a good chunk of Kansas. Whoops, didn't want to do that. I want to go to the overview. Whoop, no, I didn't want to click on it. But there is slight risk there. Just where you saw that thunderstorm pop up in the radars, just entering in that area of marginal risk that extends through eastern Colorado and a small portion of southeastern Nebraska. And then the area also pushes into western Missouri. SPC for tomorrow is showing a slight risk in North Texas into western Oklahoma and southern Kansas, with marginal risk extending northeastern there, and even a small area of marginal risk for eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. This is more for tomorrow night, where low pressure is going to be approaching, and we're going to have this buckling frontal zone that we're going to be dealing with pretty much all this week. The map that you showed that was up on the live stream, the thumbnail that was up on the preview there, kind of illustrates what the issue is going forward, and I'll spell it out for you in a moment. And then we move as we move into Tuesday, day 3, and we go day 3 outlook. Day 3, the slight risk shifts eastward into the eastern half of Colorado, northeast Texas, northwestern Arkansas, and a good chunk of the state of Missouri. We're going to be playing this game pretty much all week long. There are 3 distinct short waves that are going to be moving across. So we're going to illustrate here what's going on in the upper atmosphere right now. And I'm going to start off with the teleconnections because this will sort of drive what I'm getting at in terms of the flavor of the overall pattern. So you've got the P&A index, the Pacific North America index. Remember that measures the relative strength of the uh, general pattern of a trough in the east and a ridge in the west. And when it's negative, it's exactly the opposite. So you have a tendency for troughing in the west, and that P&A is pretty negative. So this would argue for a strong ridge in the east. However, there are two factors that are working against this. Opposite that P&A is the NAO, and that's telling us that we have a weak NAO for the next several days, which is reflecting some blocking that's going on up in Greenland. And this is suppressing the jet uh, in the south across eastern Canada. And as a result, that ridge in the east is trying to pop up, but it's going to be fighting against that block, and it's only going to be able to get so far. And the third factor here, and as I've said many times when it comes to these teleconnection indices, that East Pacific Oscillation, that EPO, is the one that I think is probably the biggest driver of them all. And remember, it's taking a snapshot of the atmosphere. It's off the wall negative, and this is uh, illustrating the idea that you've got cold air that is pretty much flooding much of Canada, and that is trying to press south as well. So you've got the ridge in the east pushing up in one direction. You've got the NAO, the block, trying to flatten that ridge down, and that is going to be the battle that we're going to see all week long. So now I'm going to bring it up on the upper air. We'll take a look at that. I haven't done this in a while with the paint box, but this kind of illustrates, this really shows what's happening with our problem for this week. So here's your trough in the west, okay, and the block is pretty evident here. Right up here is your block, okay, and now that is pushing down. Your East Pacific Oscillation is favoring lower pressures in Canada. That is suppressing the jet in Canada pretty far to the south. And here's your ridge in the east trying to pop up. And it can't because it's got the block weighing down in the other direction. So right in between all of this, at the surface certainly, is a battleground. And that battleground roughly lies where I've drawn that red line. So if you're north of there, you're going to wind up with cooler air. If you're south of there, you're talking about very warm air. And this thing is going to buckle back and forth as short waves start moving eastward and rotating along it. You've got two, let me do it in a different color here, but you've got two short waves there in that northern stream. There's another one that's off the coast of Southern California that's producing those showers. So as each of these short waves comes rolling along, you're going to have this frontal boundary buckling during this week. And if you're lying in that frontal zone, it makes for problematic forecasts going forward for sure. And in fact, as we go through the week, the ridge does try to pop up, but that block is still there. Gradually, that blocking is going to weaken, and it takes all week for it to do that. And once that is accomplished, you're going to wind up with troughing at the east at the end of the week that should get this boundary zone out of the way. While we're sitting with that east-west boundary, you're dealing with fighting off clouds and showers, and being that you have three distinct systems that are kind of moving along in that flow, it's going to be awfully hard to put together nice weather. As one short wave moves through, the next one follows, and then the next one follows after that. And gradually, as we move through next weekend, with a bit more of a northwest flow, the trough in the east is close to the coast. This should at least allow for some improvement. Maybe we'll have a couple of nice days and a nice weekend next weekend, although the jet's pretty far south here, and that would suggest that's going to mean we're going to stay on the cold side. I think it probably would work if I put the map up so you could see it. So here we go. So let me just run through that again. Your block to the north starts to weaken. There's your ridge popping up. The trough in the west begins to weaken as well. And gradually, as we go to next weekend, we're going to have a trough in the east, a troughing in the east, and kind of a split flow there in the west. The ridge up in the Canadian Northwest and troughing, developing off the coast, off the Pacific coast, and driving down toward California. So you'll have some short waves coming in the southern part of the state. By the way, as far as the longer term, if we look at the GFS, it looks like it wants to keep things moving here in the east and keeping things a bit on the cool side overall. If we're going to keep getting weather systems coming around a flow from Canada, it probably means that other than the odd day where it could warm up ahead of a cold front, you're not going to have long periods of warm weather. You might have the odd day or two or just a day, and you may have actually be able to string some at least two or three nice days back to back in between weather systems as this thing rotates around. But as far as warm weather is concerned, at least through the middle part of the month, that doesn't seem to be the case. Kind of interesting that this was all going against what the longer range models were showing in April for the month of May. It seems to have not worked out. Uh, Once again, it's one of the big reasons why I hesitate uh, to um, to go out much further than the standard week to 10 days or 2 weeks in a general sense, because there's just too much going on in the atmosphere to account for everything to really make, at least for me, I never seem to get my head around it. So here's what the GFS is telling us going forward. Of course, our first low is done and out, and now here's that system in the plains, of course, and here we are as we go into Tuesday, where we've got this first system moving through the Ohio Valley and into the east Monday night into Tuesday. In fact, showers would be getting here probably before midnight in my area Monday night and lasting into Tuesday morning before they move away. But here's a view of the surface. I think this probably will show it pretty well. Let's see if no, I don't want to do it that way. So let's try it this way. Let's go back to the paint box. And there we go. All right, so there's your surface here for Tuesday. Now here's your frontal boundary. I'm going to draw it in dark red, but your frontal boundary pretty much is going to line up like this. There we go. So you have a low in North Texas. So it just kind of runs like this on Tuesday. And and you've got your first system here, here's your second system, and here's your third system that's coming in, number 3. And this is our first player here is Monday night, Tuesday. The one in the middle is going to be for Wednesday into Wednesday night. And then the last one at the end comes through for Friday. You'll notice through all of this, by the way, there is a high right up here over James Bay, and you've got pretty much an easterly flow of cool, chilly air through southern Canada. That air is bleeding south. Meanwhile, through all of this, what do you have in the southeast? You got a nice high off the east coast and warm air coming in and just heating things up gradually through the southeastern part of the U.S. Nice weather once you go south of, looks like that boundary zone is going to be somewhere right along the Pennsylvania Maryland border, or perhaps a hair further south than that. And it will be going back and forth to the south and to the north throughout this week. Okay, back to the maps here. So here's your first wave. Here's your second one. Now this one runs up toward the Great Lakes. You've got a warm front that's going to get pinched down into Maryland and Delaware here as we get into Wednesday. It's going to try and move up. I don't know how much success it's going to have because, again, that negative NAO is going to try to fight it until it weakens enough. It does bring a pretty decent shot of precip there up through parts of Iowa and in through southern Wisconsin. And then you're still left with this frontal boundary going into Thursday. And in fact, it sinks a bit further to the south, moving down into northern Virginia and through the Delmarva Peninsula as the next low starts to come out from Texas and into the Ohio Valley. That moves through the east on Friday. And then finally, we get some improvement. Cool, dry air comes in for next weekend. And then the next one comes as we move into the following week. This would be a week from tomorrow. No big storms in here. We don't see any deep cyclones. We'll have the usual array of severe weather to deal with from day to day, but it doesn't appear that any of these systems would be enough to generate a widespread severe weather outbreak in the coming week. So that's a good thing. But I am really longing for some nice weather around here. This was not a fun weekend. Yesterday, we had some sun, and then the upper trough came through, and by mid to late morning, clouds were all over the place from me on up through New England. That lasted through much of the afternoon until finally weather conditions improved after that. And then we saw a clear beginning to the night, woke up this morning to overcast skies, and that's kind of where I'm still sitting, just waiting for some improvement. Chuck is on. So you got nothing there, nothing stuck as temperatures were in the mid to upper 30s. So that you got to have. I get this time of year, if you want to talk about having a setup, has to be absolutely perfect to produce snow, even in elevated areas. This was a perfect example. You didn't really have a perfect situation. You had some cold air, but not enough cold air. Um, Usually, no need to apologize, Jay, but I think usually by Memorial Day, this pattern really flips and adjusts itself to more substantial permanent warm up. Usually, that is around the time where you do see a bit of a flip, or at least a lessening of these patterns with the wind off the ocean. One of the things that has to happen is you got to get these water temperatures to warm up, and they're still in the mid to upper 40s. Once they get up into the middle and upper 50s, then you start to get a bit a bit less in the way of these miserable stretches like this. At least if you're an early spring planter, if you've got peas and lettuce and that, they love the cool weather in the spring and do very well. Any chance of rumbles of thunder this week? Probably toward the end of the week, I think maybe the best chance with regards to thunderstorms. Maybe with that last weather system coming through, that would be I think the shot that you might have. Let's just see. Lewis Hecht in WDC, sunny, windy, and in the 70s. Yes, you did well today. You were in that warmer air for sure, with 80s not that far away. It was really quite nice from the Mid-Atlantic states on southward. That's going to be the place to be this week. You want to be down in from Virginia on southward into the Carolinas. That's the spot. Let me bring the temperatures up in the east, and we can just be jealous, I guess. Hang on here, folks. Get that window up. There we go. So take a look at these temperatures here. Starting with tomorrow, this is at 2 o'clock, so we're not going to see the highs, but add a couple of degrees to these numbers. So you've got 80-degree readings up into Virginia, low 80s in South Carolina, Georgia, through the Gulf states. Come Tuesday, 80s again, 70s up to the southern parts of the Delmarva Peninsula to Virginia and parts of southeastern Maryland, 60s into southern New Jersey. Come Wednesday, this next weather system approaching, the 80s get clipped off a little bit. They're confined mostly to coastal areas. Look at the large area of 50s and 50s and low 60s from the plains all the way down into into the middle Mississippi Valley and even into northern Louisiana with highs only. Whoops, hold on. Let me start that again. Knew it didn't look right. Okay. So here we go. This is Monday. So you've got 80s, you've got 60s in Virginia, 70s in North Carolina, and 80s down in North and South Carolina. Now come Tuesday, you've got 80s pushing up through Virginia, 70s up into central New Jersey. That's the thing. If you're in that zone just south, if you're close to that frontal boundary, if it buckles northward by a couple of miles, you could actually warm up fairly well. Wednesday, we've got 80s in Virginia again. It looks like you got temperatures near 70 in southern New Jersey, but notice in New England it's only in the 40s and 50s. Thursday, you've got a good warm up here with temperatures pushed up. So this is the warm sector. Is it going to make it with that last low that approaches at the end of the week? If it does, it wants to push, the GFS wants to push 80-degree readings up to New York City. And there's your odd warm day, because on Friday it starts to cool off again. And now you've got next weekend where you've got cooler air coming down out of Canada that's going to dominate the weather scene in much of the East. Crazy, crazy pattern, but that's springtime for you. You still have that volatility in there. We've got, I'd say we've got another month plus, at least 5 weeks of working through all of this before you start to see things settle down a bit. And then you'll start to see the hints of summertime beginning to appear on the scene. Let's see. Back to the chat board we go. Did I hear about the unexpected tornado warning on Friday in Connecticut? I did see that tornado warning that was up east of Hartford, yes, but it was nothing. But I did hear there was some 1.8. There was hail. There definitely was hail reported, not just there, but in places near me. Parts of Long Island saw some hail, as did in New York City, and also in parts of the Hudson Valley. Those were some strong thunderstorms. And for my Long Island viewers, we've actually having a couple of thunderstorm episodes here in the month of April. And those who live out here know that in the last 5 or 6 years, we've been in a bit of a thunderstorm drought overall. So I'm wondering whether this is perhaps a sign that the thunderstorm drought on Long Island is coming to an end. We shall see. I think maybe I've seen at most 3 or 4 thunderstorms in the last 5 years out where I live, and in Suffolk County, especially as you get deeper into the summer, we do wind up getting a fair amount of thunderstorms in a typical year. But the last 5 or so years there's been a remarkable absence of thunderstorm activity. All right, folks, let's call it a day. Still plenty of time left on this Sunday to enjoy yourselves. So by all means, please do. We'll be on normal schedule this week. So be sure to tune in. Our live stream tomorrow night, probably figure around 7 or 7:30. And it's a normal week for Mr. Rayos. So we'll have our Joe and Joe weather show as well coming up during this week. So if you don't have Facebook, and you can't watch it on my page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, not to worry, because I do upload it to my YouTube channel, to this YouTube channel, once the show is done, and it usually gets up there by about 10 o'clock Eastern time. So you can watch it certainly on the replay if you can't watch it live. All right, Game of Thrones tonight, folks. So enjoy it, and we'll see you tomorrow.